So moving along swiftly, I'd like to introduce Dr. Hugh Henry, who's the Head of Innovation and R&D with Bord na Móna, and looking forward to hearing another Irish success story. Hugh.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm going to dumb it all down, guys. I'm going to talk to you primarily about innovation. I'm going to talk about how an Irish company, iconic company like Bord na Móna, made the transition and is on a journey because, as I know it's an old cliche, but innovation is a journey, not a destination. You never get there. Apologies to people in advance. I have a brace fitted to my teeth, so if you can't understand me, read the subtitles. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this, and primarily about innovation. You heard a fair bit about research already. My name is Hugh Henry. My colleague is somewhere in the audience here, and we'll be around for the day if you want to talk to us. Just very briefly, I'm going to talk about an introduction. We really heard a lot about research and 2020, Horizon 2020 funding this morning. Well, I'm saying, why would you bother? Why do that at all? Why should a company involve itself, particularly a company like Bord na Móna, in innovation? Given that this is an innovation conference, and I forgot to thank Colin and his colleagues in advance for asking me to speak here, but we'll define what innovation is, and just bear with me on that. But it's probably easier to tell you what innovation isn't. And we'll talk about that as well. I'll talk about how we innovated. I'll talk about the process we developed and finish up and promise Sylvia I'll do it on time. We'll finish up with the principles. So without further ado, let's get the bias out of the way. We're an old-fashioned company, primarily in the Midlands. I don't know why that's jumping forward. Can anybody tell me why that, where that is? We're a Midlands company, that's a clue? No, it's the middle of Dublin. So it's 1946, just after the war, and we were stacking peat high in the Midlands. At that stage, sorry, it keeps flicking forward. And we were keeping the fires burning in Dublin and the lights lit. But today, I'm glad to say I'll move on from that. We've become something different. We're quite a diverse company now, involved in a whole range of areas. And briefly going back, you don't get from there to there without some degree of innovation. Innovation was happening in the company long before I came along. It'll probably be happening long after I go. So innovation, with respect to the academics here, isn't something that's really complicated, and it's not something that's about putting space rockets on the moon. It's much more grounded and relevant to SMEs and small business as it is to the large multinationals. But to give you an idea of what we're in now, if I was to do a Vox Pop, you guys would say, well, that's that big bogman, and you're primarily around briquettes. And some of you would say, well, you're involved in horticultural products, but very few would say you're involved in wind farming, you're involved in recycling of materials from waste, you're involved in ambience, and I hope there's nobody from the Athlone area, but we're also talking about taking water from where it's most plentiful in the country, i.e. the Shannon, to where it's most needed, i.e. on the East Coast. So we're involved in quite a range of areas. And one of the things Richard talked about, and I feel your pain, Richard, wherever you are, you know that innovation has 98% failure rate. Well, I can tell you all about that because most of what we've done so far hasn't worked. So I can probably tell you best about what not to do than what to do. But nonetheless, we have made the transition, and we are on that journey. So what's innovation? Apologies again to the academics about dumbing the whole thing down. Well, where do you start with these things? I looked up the innovation on the World Wide Web, and that can't be wrong, really, can it? So hundreds of thousands of hits come back about innovation definitions, and we picked a few of those. Innovation is simply the process of generating new ideas, using them to replace what's already in the marketplace with something that works better, lasts longer, or is more appealing to a wide spectrum of customers or a target niche, so as to increase market share. Now that's a big mouthful, but it's really all about market share. Second one, altogether more simple, it's about creating or retaining a customer. And the last one, innovation, is about creation of value for stakeholders. So it's really about those three underlined words. It's about market, customer, and value. So it's as simple as that. And sometimes we do have to get over all the apparent complexity and go back to basics and realize that it's about adding value. Some misconceptions, I think it's very important that we bear that in mind, because the conference is called Research and Innovation. R&D is converting money to knowledge. So I give Bernie here $1 million, and I come back in a year's time, and certainly she's converted that $1 million I've given her to knowledge, but it's knowledge in a report or in your head or whatever. Whereas innovation is about converting that knowledge, be it in your head or a report, to money. So it's a step further. Creativity is coming up with an idea, but innovation is bringing that idea to life. And invention is creation of a concept, where innovation is commercializing that concept. So in simple terms, we say R&D, creativity, and invention are elements, are subsets of innovation. So with that in mind, and with those definitions together, we set about putting a formal approach to innovation. The sort of main objective we have is to transform the company. Now, you can do that by innovation right across the board. And we say innovation can be strategic innovation, business model, customer-led innovation, or technology innovation. Yet, if I was to do a vox pop around here, you'd all gravitate towards the last one, technology. Now, technology innovation is only part of it. It's probably the most complicated part of it nonetheless. That's why we all go to it or gravitate towards it, but the others are also important. Very quickly moving on to how we went about, or how we go about dealing with the innovation agenda in Bord Mona. Our core approach is as follows. I take on board what was said this morning about innovating in the near term, middle term, and long term. Well, we have an approach that we call the Horizon. The Horizon 1, 2, and 3. Horizon 1 is about doing what you do better. It's about continuous improvement innovation. Horizon 2 is about what comes next. And Horizon 3 is well out in the future. What happens when, we all don't live here anymore, we live on other planets, or there's no chimneys on houses or whatever. So unfortunately, people tend to gravitate towards Horizon 3 innovation when they approach it. And I know that Horizon 2020 is mainly a long-term gain. So it's really around the Horizon 2/3 area that Horizon 2020 targets. Horizon 1, which is really the rubber hitting the road innovation, is more near term. It's all about continuous improvement, and that tends to be funded in some other mechanism rather than the H2020. You heard a few definitions. I'll talk briefly about the open innovation model, about decentralization, and about innovation and horizons. That's our core approach to innovation. So if you take nothing away, take the contents of this slide away. More detail on Horizon 1. Horizon 1 is defined as the current cash generative business activities in Board Murrah, and substitute your own company for Board Murrah. Any innovation here is about doing what we do better or incremental improvement. Innovation is centered around what we call mastering the basics, and we call those people the operators. They used to be called cash cows, but in our experience, people don't like to be called cows, so we changed it to operators. Horizon 2 is new business activities which will enable your company, or Board Murrah, expand past the next number of years and become cash generative in the future. Innovation here is centered around raising the bar, and the people in that community are called builders. That doesn't necessarily mean they're any better than the operators, quite the contrary. Horizon 3 are the people who look the blue skies, the navel-gazing people. And that's really where you get disruptive innovation. That's about the Horizon 2020, the game-changing stuff, and that's the visionaries. Now, I don't always put this slide up because people tend to look at that and you say the visionaries are better than the operators. Well, the visionaries won't be around too long if the operators don't do their work, and your business doesn't stay in trading conditions, positive conditions, because the visionaries depend on that. What process have we put in place? We work over the innovation cycle, and this is our slide. I'm not necessarily saying that this is the way it is. I'm saying this is our experience. So don't shoot me for putting up something that you don't disagree with. The first part of the innovation cycle, we say, is identifying the opportunity. So they say to get one good idea out, and given that that's a numbers game, you need to stuff lots of ideas in. So ideation, I don't know if it's the Queen's or the King's English, but it's the means by which you generate ideas that are relevant to your company. You pick the best from that, and there's a scientific rigor associated with that, and you do what we call preliminary investigation, quick look. The whole idea of the innovation cycle, the objective is to fail cheaply and fail quickly. If you're going to fail early. Don't have spent a huge amount of money. At that stage, once we generate the ideas and prioritize the ideas, we hand it over for delivery, i.e. project delivery implementation to the businesses, but it's really for nothing if there isn't some sort of return. And I was very struck by this morning the debate about outturns versus impact. In a company, it's very much impact. If we don't have the turnover associated with our activities, as a result of our activities, we don't get it for long. But there is another element to it. So the first three clouds there are the first three elements, but the fourth one is about getting the balance right. And you remember I talked about the horizons 1, 2, and 3. You need to do an appropriate evaluation right across the three horizons. We can't all be navel gazers, but or we'll be out of business. But we can't be all Horizon 1 improvement, continuous improvement people either, because look at Kodak. Kodak were in business and they were innovating away in the Horizon 1 area, watching their competitor over the fence, Fuji, and somebody came left field with innovation around digital photography, and they were out of business more or less overnight. So it's important that somebody in your company is keeping an eye on the next horizon opportunities. The open innovation, you heard a lot about open innovation. Open innovation is really about sharing, knowing that you can't hold everything internally in your company. We work with a lot of people. Dennis, the IRDG, many of the universities here are part of our what we call the innovation ecosystem. So it's really about looking for the internal opportunity, but also looking outside for the external opportunity also. The structure, I'm not saying it's the right one, but it's one we use. We have a very core innovation team that we will be part of the central oversight mode, but we've decentralized innovation out into the business itself. So the next couple of steps within our pyramid there are embedded right throughout the businesses. We have this oversight role within the center itself. A little word about ideas. Ideas really are the lifeblood of innovation. Because so many of your innovation activities fail, you have to do quite a lot of kissing of frogs to get the prince. So we've more or less approached this on the stage gate model that you all probably know about. Ideas primarily come from two main areas. They come from the very top is the internal focus in purple. The guys at the bottom in black, I think, is the external ideas. And we have undertaken in recent times a drive to get more internal ideas. Pretty soon we'll do a drive to get more external ideas. Once we get ideas in, and they're cartoon represented there by the dots, they go into the innovation funnel. We do the first evaluation, which is the quick look. Then we do business case, and at that stage we start to spend a serious amount of money. But projects fail at an early stage. You don't set out to fail, but you make sure that if they don't show promise at an early stage, you move on. In creating ideas, we use this basic model, which is called the Divergent Convergent model. It sounds a bit complicated and academic, but it's really, you get people like yourselves sitting around a table, and you give yourselves a problem. And the first element of your day is to come up with what are the possible solutions. And nothing is barred, nothing is evaluated, nothing is called stupid at that stage. But in the afternoon or later on in the session, you converge. And converge means you make choices based on the choices that you listed this morning, earlier on in the session. But I should say that divergence is easy, but convergence is hard. One of the things we use is what we call our review gate process, which is that you stuff ideas into the funnel and you progressively look at those in terms of their success rating, and you kill off a project very early if it doesn't show potential. So the review gate, I won't say much more about that. That's pretty well documented in the literature. We also operate what we call portfolio map. And that's to show that you have a good mix of projects between the horizons and between the ones that you're pretty certain about succeeding and ones that are more speculative. But if they come about, if they're successful, they'll generate something significant. So all our projects are put on a graph like that, where we try to get a good mixture between primarily quadrant 1 and quadrant 3/4. The quadrant 2, you really should consign those projects to the waste bin. And finally, I'm on time. What we have done, and I caveat again by saying it's not necessarily the right way, it's the way we've done it. We have a list of principles that we've selected that are core to our innovation process. The process has to be simple. That's not to say that the projects going through it are simple, just the process, the means by which they're evaluated has to be straightforward. It has to be commercially led. Interesting talks earlier about you talking about the difference between applied and non-applied or fundamental. I would get the right royal kick in the you know what for doing anything that wasn't applied. Doesn't have an end game, isn't commercially focused. So all my innovation is about that. You must be led by firm market insights. And I use that led guardedly because in Horizon 1 and 2, you probably need to be market-led. In Horizon 3, you need to be market-aware because whoever in the focus group said, I want an iPod, said, I want a Sony Walkman that's a bit more portable or whatever. Every idea will be considered, not necessarily run with, but considered. Be customer-centric, listen to your customer, the VOC, open to everyone, operate a balanced portfolio between risk and reward. That's also between the horizons. Recognition and reward is critical. Achieve sustainability criteria. Things are all about sustainability now. Climate change is a big mega trend. So I don't think we for example, we couldn't build a nuclear power station in the Burn. Might make commercial sense, but it really goes against the grain in terms of sustainability criteria. Celebrate successes, but very importantly, I put it in at the end here, the CEO had celebrated successes. I put in allow for failure because so much what you do fails. I think you need to communicate successes. That's internally and externally. And above all, we should realize that innovation is a team sport. And it really, just bear with me on this one and indulge me a bit. It doesn't fit, but I thought it was pretty relevant in terms of where one should focus their efforts on. And it came from some research that was carried out by the Cranfield University people and AXA, the Irish branch of the AXA insurance group. And they collated where the ideas that they come up with, which ideas turned into some sort of commercial gain. Now, 40% of the ideas that they focused came from continuous improvement. 40% or 10% came from borrowed ideas. Borrowed ideas is really a pseudonym for stolen ideas. You don't reinvent the wheel. 40% from the elimination of waste. So 40 and 40, 80